Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet with you again after a long time. I was sent to Switzerland, and I'm talking from here to you, and I'll be talking about the question of knowing if COVID-19 is an opportunity for African sovereignty. The global competition that had already started before the outbreak of the pandemic has been reaffirmed by COVID-19. Big countries are fighting to reposition themselves. We are in the situation described by Thucydides in the history of the Peloponnesian War. You have an hegemonic will of a dominant power that trigger clashes with a rising power, leading to two outcomes. Either the established power makes room for the emerging power through negotiation, or there is war. What should be the posture of the African countries facing this trap? Do they have an interest in choosing a side as they did in the Cold War era when they proclaimed themselves non-aligned, despite being factually aligned on one bloc or the other? We all remember that Houphouët-Boigny was aligned on Kennedy and Sékou Touré on Khrushchev. Or is it in their best interest to open up to all the camps, knowing that this choice will have economic, financial, social, and geopolitical consequences? Well, let's start. In addition to the health crisis, COVID-19 has sparked a public outcry in the developed world, where people have been astonished that their big countries did not have the ability to produce such simple things as masks, vents, swabs, gloves, antibiotics, and that a Chinese-style Marshall Plan was put in place to help them and save them. Another interesting observation: during the 2016 US presidential campaign, when Donald Trump said America first, he was mocked by his opponents and the Europeans for what they called a retrograde and protectionist speech. Today, with COVID-19, everyone agrees with him. We have seen European countries hijack and steal masks, drugs, ventilators from each other, each saying, "Me first, my country first." Since the end of the Cold War, the world has been characterized by intense trade flows. Before COVID, Adam Smith's doctrine taught us that we must do what we do best at home, let others do what they do best at home, and then trade so everyone wins. The more you trade with others, the richer you are. In this perspective, the foreigner is seen as an opportunity. But some countries are now starting to say that the foreigners or the partner can also be an adversary or an enemy, as COVID has brutally shown. Whether it is Germany, France, Italy, England, etc., everyone is talking today about repatriating their foreign-based industries so that in the future, they don't have to depend on anyone anymore. But if European or American industries relocate to their territories, what will happen to Africa, as our continent is having no industries to repatriate, but is rather seeking to benefit from the relocation of foreign industries? Will the multinational established in Africa shut down in the near future? Or should African countries nationalize those companies because they also, understandably, don't want to depend further on the goodwill of foreigners? Africa has often experienced the harms of the dependency. Francophone Africa has yet to recover from the economic crisis they have faced since France unilaterally decided to devaluate the CFA franc in 1994. And the people of Côte d'Ivoire tremendously suffered when France declared an embargo on medicines or when French banks closed overnight, kidnapping the assets of their Ivorian clients during the 2010 post-election crisis. But since the new COVID paradigm now recognizes dependency as an element of economic weakness, Africans must take advantage of this rhetoric to refuse that the price, the quantity and quality of their natural resources depend on other countries. They must decide to mainly enter into partnership with people who are able to manufacture the end product in Africa and sell it to the world. So will Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, for example, inform the West that from now on, cocoa will no longer be exported, but that companies wishing to offer chocolate to their European customers will have to open factories on site and produce chocolate in Azagye and Accra, rather than exporting timber that will be processed elsewhere for sale? IKEA furniture should be manufactured in Libreville and Dakar. You want iron? You want cobalt? We create the steel industry in Bamako and the battery factories in Lumumbashi. Oil is to be pumped and refined in Kaduna, in Luanda, in Limbe, and then sold to the world. In case of a crisis, we have the finished product locally. On another front, since the 2008 financial crisis, the dollar and the euro have been in serious problems which could not be resolved by the quantitative easing. COVID-19 has seen a breakdown of solidarity within Europe, and even with regards to the European Economic Response Plan, there are significant divisions within the Eurozone. On the one hand, countries like France, Italy, Spain favor the Corona bonds option, and on the other hand, those like Austria and the Netherlands are firmly rebutting the mutualization of debt. Meanwhile, China and Russia have been working on their financing schemes for a long time. Will African countries seize advantage of the situation to take control of their currencies, central banks, financial markets, incoming flows, interest rates, exchange rates, or will they let this continue to be defined at the desires of France, Europe, the USA, or China? As financial markets refocus on national economies, does this not give African countries an opportunity to work on their monetary integration and create their own Wall Street or city? Is it not the time to accelerate the break with the colonial powers and the end of the CFA franc by learning from the failure of the Eurozone and by favoring the option of the common currency rather than that of the single currency within ECOWAS and ECAS? Will African leaders abandon the humiliating begging for the cancelling or rescheduling of debts and demand implementation of the 2013 African Development Bank Global Financial Integrity Plan to combat corruption and illicit capital flight? On the last part that I want to touch base today, we noticed that during the pandemic, as always, copying what others do, African leaders found themselves imposing lockdowns and curfews and promising to provide assistance to the most vulnerable population of their respective countries, who are usually peasants. But in Africa, there is nothing of the social system that allowed the Western and Asian states to better manage this aspect of the crisis. They just distributed rice and oil, but no one wonders what people are eating ever since they were given 3 kilos of rice and a bottle of oil in April for a crisis that started in March and that is still ongoing. Now is the time to ask ourselves about our ability to improve the agricultural production system so that even when ports, airports, borders are closed for a long time, when international trade is stopped, there is no disruption in the supply of food and essential goods. If agricultural countries like ours had developed the production of rice, of bananas, of cassavas, of corns, of yams, of products we actually eat in Africa, we would be less subject to foreign dictates. To achieve this, it is very urgent that we proceed with the land reform. Public hearings, cadastre, registration of plots, free distribution of land titles to the population, and creation of stock exchanges. So in conclusion, instead of falling into the Cold War trap, where it was necessary to be pro-American or pro-Russian, we can only hope that African people finally realize that with COVID-19, we just need to be pro ourselves and take advantage of all the opportunities offered to us by all sides. It is time for the African people to impose at the top of their countries politicians who have the will to conquer the sovereignty that will lead to social progress on the continent by ending imprisonment in unfair international trade and treaties due to the senseless agreements that some of our past and current leaders have signed, such as ACP, EPA, World Trade Organization, CFA franc, by also moving away from the extroverted rent economy that is ineffective for our real needs. And last but not least, by putting an end to the lack of cooperation within ECOWAS and ECAS, which is our new horizon, if we want to successfully get out of the impoverishing, alienating, and hostile face-to-face with France and other colonial powers. Thank you very much for giving me that time to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalie. You're posing very sharp and very interesting questions as always, but I have one for you as well. This issue that you touched upon, the CFA franc and the reform that was scheduled pretty much for this summer, right? I mean, I do understand that the plan was changed quite a lot because of the pandemic. But what is currently happening? I mean, is there any information available in the public space? Because as far as I understand, some big announcements were supposed to be made at the beginning of June at the France-Africa Summit, and now that everything is quite different, what is happening behind the scenes? Do we have any information about it? Is there anything available in the public space? Because all that we could see was that, if I'm not mistaken, Nigeria and Liberia were making some announcements saying that they don't seem to like this plan of ECHO. So what are the updates?
Thank you for asking, Joe. Actually, there's nothing new. I mean, we can only be happy that due to COVID, this France-Afrique summit that was scheduled in Bordeaux has been postponed, I think, until the end of the year or early next year. What you need to know is that the recent announcement made by France are actually a big bunch of lies. France is actually trying to kidnap the project that was developed by ECOWAS to create a single currency in the economic community. And they started that project decades ago. And they decided they are going to call this single currency ECO, like ECOWAS, the beginning of ECOWAS. And because of the pressure of the African people, of the public opinion in Africa and everywhere against the CFA franc, because the focus that was put on that also after Sochi, which led to me being expelled from Ivory Coast, because of this tremendous pressure that has been put on this colonial currency, France has just decided that, okay, let's keep the mechanism in place, but change the name of the currency. And so that's what they announced at the end of last year in Abidjan. And a few people, very naive, thought, oh, that means that the CFA is over and that now the ECHO is going to be launched. But the ECHO is not going to be launched anytime soon, because the ECHO is the project of the ECOWAS. And as you rightly said, Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, the non-Francophone countries in ECOWAS are not accepting the system of having a currency linked to the euro. And not having the flexibility to decide and manage their own currency.